So I'm going to go. I was going to pass this over to Paul Noonan, who was going to interview our three distinguished ladies here today. When I thought of a program, or talked to Paul about a program for the annual meeting, which sometimes we have one, sometimes we don't. I said, wouldn't it be nice to do I Remember When and have a reminiscent time, something very informal, and even though it's being videotaped, we've decided to videotape our programs and offer them here at the library for people to view, for people who do miss meetings. We talked about who we'd like to have, and I said I'd like to keep it to women. It seems like we've got a majority today of women, but we had a program that had, I don't know if you recall, Cooper Rennie was here, or they call him, but
it was from a logbook. It really happened.
Yeah.
My father wrote about it in the book before.
Here we go. So, Mrs. Fredfield, can we call you Betty?
If you'd like to.
Okay. And Mrs. Brooks,
Mrs. Harriet Cabot.
Mrs. Harriet.
I am Rogues at the moment. Can't employ the fun.
Sure. You'll never lose that. And Mrs. Archibald Murray.
That's good.
Would you like to sit up in something a little bit more comfortable up here?
Anna Madison.
Is that your maiden name?
Yes.
Madison.
Yeah. M-A-T-T-I.
M-A-T-T-I. Okay. I thought what we do is get you for the record. Eric, what's the best? Should we have the? We'd like to take. We'd like
I can move the camera around. That's not a problem.
At least so everybody can see you.
I'm shy.
You're shy. What about you, Harriet?
Well, I don't mind where I'm put at this point.
Would you like to come up here?
Not particularly.
Not particularly.
But you're on the hot seat.
Collect my
Do you want soft or hard chairs?
I'm here.
Soft or hard chairs?
Oh, hard one.
A hard chair. Okay.
Your birth dates?
Uh-oh. Oh, sure.
True.
Third, right?
What do you want to
I'm
start
surprised
with?
at mine.
Well, I don't know.
My birthday's January 12th, 1911. I'm 85 years old.
And mine is January 8th, 1908. And I'm 88 years old.
And mine is July 27th, 1913. I'm 82.
Well, I didn't give you my name. It's Harriet Ropes Cabot.
Elizabeth Durrell Field, otherwise known as Betty or Liz or Debs or whatever.
And most Cotuit calls me Aunt Hannah.
So, let's see. Why don't we start with Harriet or Aunt Hannah?
What do you want me to tell you?
We'll do age before beauty, or
Oh, I think you mean when I first came down?
yeah.
I think they brought me, oh I know, they brought me down in the train when I was, yeah, born in January. Couldn't have come down much before April or May, in the train. And Mother was frightened to death because she thought I'd catch everything out of the train. But they told her that if she put me in a basket, I'd be all right. And she had some rights there because she'd waited 10 years before I came into the world.
Anna?
Well, I came when I was a child. I've been here every year of my life. In fact, I was here before I was born because my mother said that she and her sisters went on an overnight over on Dead Neck, and it was raining that night, and they had a little pup tent over them, and there was a hole in the pup tent, and my sisters weren't supposed to know my mother was pregnant, but grandmother had told them, and so she went over there. At night it rained, and there was a hole in the tent, and so my aunt kept poking the top of the tent to make the water slide off so that that pregnant woman wouldn't get pneumonia.
You have great faith in our remembering these, don't you? our age. How do you know? You know about the two men who sat in the front porch rocking. And one of them said, Jed, you know, when I got retired, I've been looking forward to being retired. I told him. And sitting on the front porch rocking and reminiscing. And he says, you know, now it's come. I got plenty of time to reminisce. I can't remember a darn thing. I came down in I guess it was a Maxwell, when I was 4 weeks old. My great-grandparents lived, Captain Chatfield, lived where the Tribbles live now. And that was, both houses were family houses, where I lived too, on this side. And I came down with a nurse and my parents, and I don't remember much about it. But,
Maxwell being a car?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
Sorry, I forgot that. No, my great-grandparents wanted their 4 daughters to come down every summer, and then fortunately each of them married educators, and so they could come for the summer, and that's what happened. And before it ended up, there were about 22 of us all summer long between the 2 houses. We all lived together, which in itself is an education for children, I think. Not many children get the privilege of doing that anymore. You get to know that old people are people.
So did all of you, when you came down, did you come down to the house that you now originally live in, or Harriet?
Well, I came down to the Thoreau's house, which is a big yellow house. I built my little house because my brother had children and 4 more of them. So that's how we divided it up.
So you came to that spot.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't in my house until 1918. And before that, we rented houses. And the first house, one of the houses we rented had a terrible refrigerator. And it was just like a small coffin lying on the ground. And it had a lid that came up just as if it were a coffin. And there's somebody, and when the Iceman came, you had to take everything out so he could put the cake of ice in there, and then you put everything back in and around the cake of ice. And that was what I remember. And that house is now owned by the Walcotts down here. But it's been changed since then. And then later on, about refrigerators, when we got into my house, which I now live in, it had a much better refrigerator with the 4 doors on it. So the ice went in the top right, and the milk went down below that. So when you wanted a glass of milk, you weren't opening the whole ice box up and having it warm again. It was much more sensible. I don't know why they don't do that still.
Well, you had electricity early then.
No, we had ice in there.
Oh, I see, ice, yeah.
And later on it was electrified.
Because we didn't get electricity until 1920. Or 20.
That's what I
Were you just coming down summers as well?
We just came down summers and weekends.
And weekends.
I mean, when we were very young, we didn't come down for weekends, but I think I've been down for most weekends ever since I was old enough to get myself down here.
What was Cotuit like then for you? I mean,
Well, Cotuit was, I came down much younger, and here's a picture of me and my sister Mary, who died when she was 6. But I brought it down because I wanted the people to see what we wore at the beach.
Oh, yeah.
And notice the socks, long white stockings, and the shoes that we had on. And now I just crave this feel of sand between my toes, which I was kicked out of as a child.
Was this Betty's showing a picture of her with one ship in the back, and this is summertime.
Oh, yes.
Where the dock is now.
Where the dock is.
Now, would this be your beach wear?
Yes,
Your little
that's what
dress
Anna
and
said. You
stockings.
wore socks up to here and Mary Jane's and a hat and all
Anna,
this.
is this
Yes,
show? Did you go
that's
down to
me.
the water or go
Braids,
swimming
yeah.
anytime you wanted?
Mary has socks and shoes on too, but you can't see because they're covered by her dress.
That was the worst of it. You had to put your shoes and stockings on before you went back to the house.
Oh, yes.
Well,
And
we,
it went,
And
there
my
I
father
am
had-
at the beach
had
and I had never
line
touched
on his
them all.
fixed rings. He thought he was being very clever, and it was when it was sunny. But because you could go in and dry off in the bathhouse, when the sun was out. She had a chicken wire top to the roof of the bathhouses. But you didn't dress in the house, you dressed in the bathhouse.
yeah.
And kept your clothes down
And you
there.
had a pail that you lugged down and filled full of water till it made seawater.
And it was
To
hard to
wash your
get your
feet in.
socks on over your damn
Oh.
feet.
Yeah, and you couldn't get dry anyway, especially if it was gray.
No.
So you didn't put your feet in the water, or did you?
Oh, you did?
Oh,
You
yeah.
did.
We have muddy water where we are.
But I mean, as a child, you would have just played on the sand. You wouldn't have played in the water.
Oh, yes, we played in the
You
water.
did, even though you had those shoes on.
Because you had people watching
Oh,
you
no,
like
you took
hawks.
the shoes
You did,
off.
didn't
Counting
you?
pennies.
And you took
Your
those
clothes
jobs.
in the bathhouse.
Oh, okay.
And got in your bathing suit. And then you came back in the bathhouse and put your clothes back on. You were sort of wet at the time. It wasn't much fun.
Did you all learn to swim and sail?
Oh yes, I went in the water at a very early age. I don't know when I did, but my father said I always crawled towards the water when I went down to the beach. And I don't remember learning how to swim. I was so young.
Well, I remember learning how to swim because Mrs. Pearson seemed to be in charge of that. They had a raft they put out in front of our place, and Mrs. Pearson's idea of teaching you to swim was to take you out to the raft and then throw you into the water.
Let you make it back to shore.
Yes.
What about you, Betty?
Learning to swim?
Did you
I
swim?
had a cousin who used to swim underwater and pull my feet out from under me, so I had to learn to swim pretty fast. I don't remember learning. I don't remember when I didn't swim, I guess.
Did you sail as young girls?
I
Yes.
crewed more than sailing.
And
Anna was a
skipped.
sailor, and so was Anna.
And my brother usually got it because he won all the races and I lost. And the result was that he got, we shared a boat with the Lowells, the 4 Lowell children and the 2 Ruffs children. And the result was that I got the short end. But I did learn to sail eventually.
Well, I learned how to sail fairly young because I went with my grandfather on a sloop that he was called the Sheila. And there's a picture of me someplace that has me at a wheel and everything, but I learned how to Cotuit skiff fairly young. But when in 19, I was going to say 21 or 2, anyway, the year Edith, my youngest half-sister Edith was born, the family didn't come to Cotuit that summer, but I and my sister Ruth went to the Hotel Pines. So I remember the Hotel Pines when I was very young. And grandfather's table where we sat for our meals had a cluster about that big lot of condiments, all of which he put on baked beans, some of which he put on his other food. But he was just shake, 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 all the condiments he put on, and that's the way I remember him.
Who was your grandfather?
Dr. Woodman, and he had a house that's where the Christie House now is, at the top of the hill overlooking the Loop Beach, the last house on the right, and that house has now been torn down, and then it was an open field. And my father later on bought that whole field. Now you've got a house that has replaced the Christie House in the front, and you've got, it used to be the Ebling House in the rear, And now they're new tenants in the Ebeling house. But that whole field was vacant for some time because my father didn't have enough money to build a house. And I remember one story about the field was that Mother had up on top of the hill where there was some shrubbery or bushes of some kind, and she chained a couple of beach chairs to it with a padlock so that she could sit up and watch the boats go by. Well, somebody threw a firecracker or something, or a sparkler or something, one 4th of July over the fence, and the fire caught loose. And we were back in our house on Main Street then, and we heard the fire whistle go off, and Mother grabbed the key to the padlock to the chair and rushed out to retrieve them so the chair wouldn't get burned up. And she rescued them just in time, and I can remember the fire chief coming, and there was a fence there and a hole in the fence for people to walk about this big. And the fire chief came along. I can't remember his name now, but he
Secret start apologies buttons before we
He was
go to
also
fire.
the police.
well, he came along. He got out of the fire truck and he said, "Can I get through there?" And I said, "I don't think so." And then he went around the block and came up from the back way and put out the fire.
Had fires like
I'm
that
surprised.
before. There was one fire I remember my mother saying, just butting in here, that they were sitting happily in the parlor, and a man came along and said, "There's a fire coming down Putnam Avenue faster than a man can run," from Marston's Mills. And so my mother had said that her mother told her to go upstairs and get clean handkerchiefs and all the money in the house. They could go out and get in a boat.
Didn't you like watermelon while you were up there?
That's right. You know, you were all located, you in the center part of town, you actually on one end of town, and you on the other end. Did you stay in those sections, or did you?
Yes,
Yes,
We
families
stayed in little family
together, I think.
groups.
Yeah.
Yes. I just played with Barbara Morse, who lived in the big Morse house across the... I went down and up, and there's a dip in the road, and I saw her every day, and that's where I got to know Granny Morse, who did the silhouettes.
Oh, she was a Quaker too.
You find them in Cotuit on people's lamps. You make the
Lucy.
lamp
Are
shades
you
out.
referring to Lucy Morse?
Yes,
Yeah.
Lucy Morse was...
What did you
Oh,
do?
Lucy Moss' mother.
Grand.
I told
No,
you,
this was
Grandma
her
Moss.
grandmother.
What did you play with the Morse girl? What did you do together as girls?
Well, we played tag outside the Morse barn there, and Barbara Morse and I discovered that there was a trap door that went up to the cupola of the barn, and we played a game called Beckon, and whoever got caught would go to the oak tree outside the barn, and then to be freed, people would beckon them around the side of the house, but we were up in this louvered
I wouldn't have gone.
place up top, and we beckoned out the window, and nobody ever found us. So we had some new girl who had just arrived, always be it, and we could keep her it all afternoon.
Who are some of your
Well,
playmates?
mostly in those days, families stayed because there were more family together
Yes.
somehow then. And ours were sometimes 22 people all living together. Next door, the Rennies, you know where Nancy Grant lives now, was usually rented. So there was a bishop from Baltimore with a lot of children. They were lots of fun. I played with people like that around, and the ministers who had children my age, I played with them. And when I got a little older, I played up at the Whites Meagut's White, opposite the inn.
Oh, what's
the
now
White, how it's now the
Fiore House?
Fiore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, Adam's Juicy Fruit Gum. Nobody's old enough to remember that. There was one family who lived in the Rennie house in the summer, and they made Adam's Juicy Fruit Gum. I was so impressed that her father had that company. Adams was their family. Adam's Juicy Fruit Gum. Weren't you allowed to
I
chew
never
gum?
knew about that.
Anyway.
Did you bring down supplies?
And I don't remember that, but we used to have plays out there on Shore Road. There was a whole thicket of bushes, and there's this flat place. And when the Baltimore people were there, we used to have plays, and I had long hair. So I was always the queen because long hair, you had to, and they didn't have long hair. And one time, they made me a crown of thistles. And it took my mother all afternoon to pick those thistles up. And then when I got older, we branched out, didn't we, Anna? I remember playing up Jenkins at the Morse's house, or Coffee Pot.
Yeah.
It was perfectly innocent, but
What's
the boys
coffee
would.
pot?
Well, it takes the place of a verb. I coffee potted, and of course the boys could make innuendos, and it would be a perfectly simple word like swim, or but just felt as if it were a little bit risque.
You coffee pot sitting down?
Around a table, don't you remember playing that?
Yeah, so we played coffee
Sure.
pot a lot.
And what about you, Harriet?
Well, we had cousins living next door, and first we all lived two families together, and then when there got to be 6 children in the house, that got to be too much for everybody, so they built their own houses also on the bluff along where I live, just beyond me.
You learned a lot of things living with a lot of different age groups. You learned, when I got back from college and my roommate came to visit me, she said, "Now I know why you never slam a screen door. Every time I went off that screen porch across the street, there would be 4 people saying to me, 'Shut the door softly and latch it after you.'" It just was one of those things in life that you just did. It didn't matter to me. I did it. And so I always turned around and shut the door, and she just opened it and let it wang. A lot of things you learn.
Excuse me, I was trying to think what we did. I can't remember. We did all sorts of things, but nothing very different.
Well, we had more good, clean fun for the kiddies kind of games, didn't
Yeah.
we?
What about, getting back a little bit to how Cotuit was back then, what was the village like?
Oh, you could leave your doors open. If something
Yes.
was missing, you knew who took it. And if you went down to the dock and you said, "Could I borrow back my anchor?" You'd say, "Oh yeah, help yourself." Get your anchor back. You didn't have to lock doors and things.
Was it a treat for you to go down to the store, down to Sears store, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember the Sears store.
Well, that was
Yeah.
a wonderful place.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what would you get there?
Well,
we had
clothes,
candy.
Cool.
Well, they
all
sold
sorts
penny
of
candy
things.
too.
There were
Yes.
clam
candies
rakes,
and
they had
sewing
everything.
things.
And then later on, there was a grocery store there.
Oh, but tell about Miss Emma Crocker first. Up
Oh,
on
yes.
the balcony of the department store, they had one of those things that they made change. It went up and over. You went
Yes.
down just to watch that thing go. Emma, and she'd make the change and back it would come.
Of course, no cash register, it was all handwritten little receipts, and
I
they
don't remember
sent
that
right
part.
through a tube. And do you remember how the packages were
Oh, I
they
think
wrapped
it was-
in paper and string and
Oh, striped
They didn't use paper
striped
bags.
paper bags for peanuts.
Oh,
You
they
remember
did.
that? Peanuts always in the shell always came in a striped paper bag, little bag.
I guess we weren't allowed them or something.
You never went to a baseball game.
No,
They
no.
sold them there.
so
Some strange reason.
you didn't go to the baseball game?
No. Our parents didn't go, so we didn't go.
I don't remember going down here to a baseball game, but when I was older, I guess I did.
It's something that came in after we grew up, more or less.
Well, I'm talking about sailing. I sailed at the Sheila first, And then later on I learned how to do a Cotuit skiff. But when my sister Edith was born, the family didn't come down because they couldn't get what they thought was good milk that came from a farm, and they didn't think the farmer washed his bottles out properly and so forth. So that's when we stayed at the Pines. And I said, oh sure, I could sail a boat. Well, to go back to the yacht club stuff, my mother had the first, and her two sisters had the first boat, and they had a brother called Cyrus. And the first boat my grandmother gave the name to, and she called it the Trillium because it was the three sisters, and it was a pretty little boat, and it was a pretty flower. And my brother Cyrus wasn't allowed to touch. And they sent him off. He was older than they were, and they sent him off someplace else during the summer. But when we were at the Hotel Pines, I said, sure, I could sail a boat. Well, I sailed it pretty poorly, but I did know how to tack. But I remember the first prize I ever won was the pirate game. And in the pirate game, the Morses dreamed up. And the prize was a pirate flag with skull and crossbones that Mrs. Morse sewed up on her own sewing machine. Later on, they had them professionally done. I think they're professionally done now, if they even have the pirate game. And in the pirate game, there is one pirate. No, there's a revenue cutter. The pirate who won last year's flag becomes the revenue cutter for next year. And the rest of the fleet goes off, and there's certain boundaries in the harbor. You can go down as far as the town dock, it used to be originally, and then farther on down as far as the Almy House, and as far up as the Morrison House. And Dead Neck, and you weren't supposed to, there was a line between the rock off the island and to the Morrison House, and you weren't supposed to go over that line. Well, in order to catch somebody, you had tennis balls, and we all kept last year's tennis balls and gave them to the revenue cutter, and you caught somebody by either throwing a tennis ball into the cockpit or ramming them with your boat. And, well, ramming them was the one that was the easiest. So, but one year, and you could do anything you wanted to. One year Mr. Bailey took his mast out and pushed his boat underneath the platform that was by his pier, and he tried to hide the boat. And another year, when my sister Faith was helping, once you got caught, once a tennis ball or you were rammed, you had to help the rest get caught. So the one year that somebody really won it, she got behind it. This was Sidner Almy. She got a friend, a boy, who had a Chris-Craft, and they towed her through the fleet, and everybody was heaving. They was heaving tennis balls trying to get one in the cockpit. But after that, we outlawed tennis balls. But one year, some husky teenage boys said, we're going to the cove in the island, Cupid's Cove, and we're going to take our clothes off, and we're going to go swimming, and we're going to wrestle with anybody who comes up, and we're going to keep, and we're going to win the prize. Well, my sister Faith got caught early, and she saw the boat sail into the cove, and she knew it was there, because the mast was still sticking up. They lowered the sail. So she got out on this side and went through the poison ivy in the grass, and the poison ivy's there, to the boat, and she had a tennis ball in their hand and just dropped it in the cat boat. And the boys were all out swimming with no clothes on, and they didn't dare come out of the water. So that's how she caught them.
You expected a lot of your crew too, because I crewed with you once, and we were going like this. The wind was like this, and I was up here on the gunnel, and Anna said, "Lean over," and I had to lean over this way. And she said, "Lean over more." I thought I was going to fall into the water.
You know, you spend a fair amount of time on the water. Did you eat a lot of the shellfish? Were you eating clams, or was that was?
Oh yeah, somebody in the family would dig up clams. We sit out on our tree and eat little necks.
Little
Yeah,
necks.
hard shell.
Oh, hard shell clams,
We
not
don't eat
steamers.
soft shell, raw.
No, not raw, but
Oh, we have
steamers.
steamed
Did you have
too,
steamers?
And there were wonderful clam bakes.
Oh yes.
No, you'd have family
We go
clam
out-
bakes?
Well,
Yes,
well, you got neighborhood clam bakes. At least that's what I remember most. Over at the where the clam bake house is.
The Cotuit Oyster Company?
Yes.
You'd all gather there and
Yeah.
have a clam bake?
And then there was a great deal
Remember
about
we did
whether
that
they should
from-
buy the Cotuit Oyster Company. I can't remember. There was a great
Henry
deal
Robbins?
about that.
Uh-huh.
About buying the oyster company. I don't think they finally didn't do it.
And who's they?
Well, just the local
The
neighbors.
To have a place, a common place
Yeah.
to have clam bakes? What about dances or anything going on at the Lyceum, at Freedom Hall? Did you do any of
We
that
went
in
to
the
the
summer?
movies in Freedom Hall.
Yes.
Against
and
our parents' wishes.
Oh,
Nellie
yeah?
Smalley played the piano, remember?
Yes.
Because they were not talkies, of course. Yeah.
Well, I remember the big movies being shown at Freedom Hall, which were silent movies, and somebody played the piano.
Oh, that was
and
with
then
Nellie
it got to
Smalley.
be very exciting. In the middle of it, she sort of didn't look at the keys and
That was
forgot
Nellie
what
Smalley.
she was playing.
Yeah.
How much would you pay for
I
the
wasn't
movie?
allowed to go to
You
it
remember?
much because I got all excited about it. If it Rin Tin Tin, for instance, I couldn't go to those.
We weren't supposed
I
to
got
go
so
either.
upset when I got
Oh.
home.
Oh, was
You
that
got
why
this-
you weren't supposed to go?
Oh, and I-
Why weren't you
I don't
supposed
quite
to go?
know. I think they just thought it was a poor plan for us going out at night or something.
Oh, I
And how would
remember
you
that.
get there at night?
You walk.
You'd walk there.
Well, it's,
Well,
it's over a mile from
company,
our
you
house
didn't
up
go by
there.
yourself.
Yeah.
But, so it seems a little long, I remember.
And did any of you go to the tea room down on Ocean?
Oh, yes. I went
that was
every
way
day until I
I don't remember.
got
going
to
as a
the
child.
teenage stage where there were boys. And then I
that was
didn't
a-
want to leave the boys, and because I was always trying to beat them up.
Oh, I
What?
That was just flirting with them.
Yes. No, this was real wrestling. Yes. I went, but my grandfather, after he gave up coming to the Pines, and my grandmother had died, stayed at the tea room, in a room over the thing. But at the end, he wanted to be sure that he was still alive, so he asked one of us to please come and call him every morning. Well, that got to be a bore, and he would let us have an ice cream cone, and they were big ice cream cones, and they only cost 10 cents, but it had 2 scoops, one pushed down in and one on top. Well, my brother Joe was younger, and he went down to see grandfather every day. Because I couldn't be bothered. I would rather go back to the race or whatever was going on at Loop Beach.
If anyone has a question, feel free to ask. I mean, I know we could go on and on
You
and on.
made your days waiting for the mail to come out when it was at the corner of Shore
yeah.
Road.
That's when you made your date.
Well, you had to wait for the window to go up. You remember Miss Isabel Crocker was the
Oh, yeah.
postmistress?
mail was
And everybody
Oh, yeah.
gathered, didn't they? Gather
All
up
the
there.
children.
And then you had to wait till the window went up, and then everybody
We have
searched
3
for 'em.
mails, didn't we, anyway?
Yeah.
I guess, but at
Yeah.
night was the one that
Everybody.
I went to.
Yeah, everybody was there at night. You went down there to see who else was there.
Yeah, sure. I
we
was
went
the only
up
one
there
with
about
roots here. They didn't have real roots because my great-grandfather father was a whaling captain, and he married
What was his name?
Captain Thomas Chatfield. And he married a local girl whose name was Florentine Handy. And her mother was on there because, you know, it went on and on and on. I figure my great-grandchildren, about the 8th generation, being around in the house. One of my ancestors was the first one buried in the Azuba Handy in the cemetery.
That lovely poem.
I got it.
Oh.
I'd bore people to death if I read it, probably.
No, I need to read it for us.
I tried to see a few of these things on my grandson. He said I'd be bored to death. My bosom friends, come here and see where lays the last remains of me. It wasn't very grammatical, but she didn't write it. When I, the debt of nature paid, a burying yard for me was made. Here lays the body of your bride. The loving knot is now untied. A loving husband you have been to me, the dearest of all men. Husband and children, here I lay. Stamp on your mind my dying day. Come often here and take a view where lay the one who loved you. And it's up there in the cemetery now. It's an old slate boulder.
Dr. Gould points that out to the children when they tour the
Yes,
the
I know,
mosque.
yeah.
Oh, I want to tell one more story about the bathhouses. The Morses had two that were 4 in each one. And the one the Morses had and the other their cousins had, the Dunnings and so forth. But Bill Morse had one, and then Barbara Morse and Lucy, and who was the other one? Marjorie had one. But if you stood on the bench that was in the back of the bathhouse, up about here, you could stand up, you could see over into the next one. If you crawled over the top and got way to the end, you got down to Bill's. So we used to go into Bill's bathhouse and lock the door from the inside and then go back the other three and exit out there, so he had a long way to get into his bathroom.
Did he ever wise up to it?
Oh, yes. And then I'll tell you another bathhouse story. There was a 4-room...
Getting better.
Oh, this is shocking. There was a 4-room bathhouse at Loop Beach. And the Mary and Bessie's family, the Benbows, had one in the back, and we had the other one in the back. And after a summer storm, Mary and Bessie, Miss Marion Benbow then, and I and Barbara Morse were swimming after a storm off the end of the pier. And we looked around, and there was a man exposing himself in the front of the bathhouse, just standing there, flipping himself up and down. But finally we got cold. And I wanted to go home and get dressed and got back to the bathhouse. And Barbara went to her bathhouse farther down the street. But I was too young to have sense enough to be afraid of anybody. But I remember Marion Benbow going into her bathhouse and grabbing her clothes and coming across the aisle into my bathhouse. And then she locked the door. Well, I did, I can't remember. And the man was still there in one of the front bathhouses. And I didn't think anything about it. And later on, we were all digging holes in the beach, and Barbara had come back to join us, and her brother Bill came down, and I said, oh, let's tell her about the man in the bathhouse. And Barbara said, oh, no, and we didn't. And then later on, I told my stepmother, and my stepmother said, but you should have called Bill. I don't know what she thought Bill was going to do about it, but anyway, I didn't realize it was a vulnerable offense and that you should have called the police.
Well, my mother used to like to walk or go swimming, and go swimming, I think, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. before she got coping with dinner, and the she discovered that there was somebody who, an Englishman who was living in one of the little houses near us on the beach, and he used to go leave his clothes in a little pile and go swimming with nothing. One day she got, I think she did it several times, but she'd go down and he with his little pile of clothes was sitting there, and she'd walk up and down the beach to keep him from coming out.
Do you have any bathhouse stories?
No, we had one
Well,
down
my bathhouse
here
is
in Lowell.
landed in New Mexico.
Lowell, I don't
Had all my
remember anything.
furniture sent out to
When,
New Mexico, done up in
When I got to be a teenager, I went down the road once when I went there. And Mr. Morse wouldn't let you on his pier. He sat there with a megaphone, remember? And this get off the pier, remember? I went and asked him once if I could just hold on to the post and practice my,
Flutter kick?
flutter kick. He said, oh, sure.
So you did most of your swimming down at,
Till I was
down the
a
hill,
teenager. Yeah.
and then you went to
I
the
didn't know about that end of the Cotuit much.
all the fun
Or
ones.
Lucy.
What about Oregon Beach? Did you ever wander down there?
Picnic
No.
down there.
You picnicked down there.
Oh.
The Morrisons
At one
lived
point.
down the last house at the left of Oregon, and I visited down there. And when I was young, Sally Dunning and Barbara Morris and I and my sister Ruth and Marion Benbow, and there were 10 of us. And we used to go up to the Morrison house, which was the last one down past Oregon Beach. You go in through there. I can't remember who owns it now. And then we used to go across to the sand spit, which came all
Yeah,
the way
sure.
down there.
It's gone.
And we would go skinny dipping on the other side of the spit. And then after a year of this fun, or maybe 2 years, Mrs. Dunning broke it up because she was afraid one of the oystermen or the fishermen going up inside the spit would entice us out of the water. Well, we weren't afraid of that. We said, well, we can run faster than they can. But anyway, she stopped the whole thing. But no man ever came after us, believe you me.
Any other questions for the ladies?
We covered.
I want to thank all of you for coming. This is really a treat. This could go on forever. Sure. Great. We have some refreshments, and if I could have a motion to adjourn, we'll do so.
Here's a picture of Captain Nelson Nicholson's place down at the end of
Oh, yeah.
Shore Road where they used to rent boats and sell ice cream and tonic.
Could you buy shellfish from them or eat shellfish down there as
I
well?
don't know, I never did. I always
Never
had, with a tin spoon, a little carton of ice cream.
Boy, there's very few boats in the harbor.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something. Can I pass that around?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's right at the foot of Shore Road now.
Not Ropes Beach.
Where's the Hatters over here?
Of course,
Where's the Hatters over here?
Yeah. Wasn't anybody over there though, except
No,
one
the
man.
Channing.
Professor Channing used to row over
And
every
Cousin
morning
Lawrence Lowell
to get the
built
mail.
bought the next lot to him so as to protect him so that nobody could.
We used to go over there and slide down
Right
that
across the
sandbank.
outlet.
Remember how there was a big sandbank?
Yes. I got a picture.
Well, I had a
Don't you
friend,
remember they
girlfriend, he used to
threatened
row
to
over
have
there
a
and slide down the
place for
sandbank.
planes?
That's what
They
the
would
Hatters
be
We had one on, there's one at the end of our beach.
during Camp Can't Do It days?
No, way before that. They were gonna land on either, I don't know,
That's somebody else's, was all right.
Dead Neck. This was in the 20s, I guess. My mother got all upset.
I remember you being wheeled down past our house every day by your nurse in a cart that would look like a wooden box with wooden wheels, two wooden wheels on either side, and she in a white uniform would be pushing you down and she's young, you see. And Mrs. Oh, who who's the artist, Reggie Bowles.
Oh, yes.
His mother. She stayed at the Cotuit house up here, and I used to love to watch her because she wore black dress way down to here and a little thing over here with little balls that jiggled. And she had earrings that jiggled too, and she had a black parasol. And she walked down, and everything about her. She was cute.
Just quickly, you say, are you related to Clara Nickerson Bowden?
Yes, in a way. Cousin Victor was my grandmother's cousin or something. And that log was one that my great-grandfather was on that trip and knew about that baby that they brought back in that keg of rum.
Keg of rum.
Yeah.
Baby
And he
Harriet.
felt so sorry for the mother. He was helping out Uncle, whatever his name was, who was the captain at the time.
Well, if you haven't had a chance to read that book, you should, because it gives a perspective of Cotuit that
Where can you find that?
it's here.
It's here at the
Right here at the library. Actually, I think there's a copy in the Cape Cod room. I think you can check out.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
My father wrote about it in a book he wrote. I think there's
There's coffee in the back, and you're all welcome. Thank you for coming.
I had notes that I had written, which I haven't even used. But I thought that they didn't.
Are you coming down the car, or are you going home?
We were going to have to speak separately.
Can you take me by my
I sure can. I had a park and I was late.
Yeah, my mother took that picture, and I was told that Eastman Kodak gave her a prize for it, but what they gave her a prize.
Look, could I take you over and get you something to eat, all right?
I didn't know you were I thought Paul was going to be here.
Yeah. Different view of Cotuit.
We did July and August last year.
What is your name? I can't.
Ruth Rusher.
Ruth Rusher. That's right. You give the tours. I'm Eric Mickelson.
Oh,
I've talked to you before. Don't you give tours
That's right.
down in Hyannis? You do the sou'wester or whatever hats and stuff like that.
I don't
Okay.
have my sou'wester on. She
Yeah,
don't know me.
Yeah.
made-
Talk about clam trees and rock arbor and
Things
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Good to know. That's good. That's good stuff. No, I think that's fun. Now, do you live here in Cotuit?
No.
Oh, okay.
But I
You-
spend a lot of time here with Joan
Uh-huh.
Benning Smith. And so we came over to hear the girls.
Yeah, that's fun.
It sure is always.
You're about the same vintage, I would say.
You would? Can't believe
Well, just from reading the stories that you've told.
Can't believe it. You must have seen Prime Time. Am I? I'm waiting.
Yes, I did, as a matter of fact.
Am I holding someone up way
right.
at the end?
Well, you did the cover girl, right?
Yes. And Centerfold?
Oh, Centerfold, that's
All,
what
both, all at one time. Now I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm just going to wear the sou'wester. Go to Playboy, make a little money.
Why not?
Careful where they put the staple, Ruth.
Why not?
Absolutely. That's a good
You know,
idea.
I was in Florida a while back, and I went to visit a company tour owner that I have not seen since I toured with them for 3 days. And they were on the Pilgrim Bell. If you remember, that was the first boat that Highline built.
Offhand, no, but
And these people were on that. It ran ashore over here in near Cutting-Young. And they were doing a cruise up the coast. So, of course, nobody could go anymore. They brought them out. So my boss said, hey, could you take care of these people and tour the Cape and so on, do what they were going to do on land instead
yeah,
of
right.
no problem, let's do it. So I hadn't seen them. Now that would have been 10 years or more back. So I just went and rapped on the door when I was in St. Petersburg. And I didn't know the woman, she didn't know me. But when I saw her husband, so she said, you know, if you'd had your sou'wester on, I'd have known you.
Yep, yep. That's it. Recognition factor.
All the way.
Thanks for coming.
I got my jacket. Is that with you?
I'm going to move my Cabot. You don't need double letters. I can
Well, yeah, I
I
want-
don't want to hold any
We used to rock in this.